I don't even know how to grab all of this to do a thumbnail. I was going to do it all in a big stack. But I don't know if that's going to work. Okay. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Emily Knits channel. You may not be able to see, but I am surrounded down here by 3 gigantic piles of finished objects from 2024. So that's what you'll have already seen from the title of the video, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to talk about everything I knit and crocheted in 2024. It's quite a lot. I had on my list, I've got my laptop here, let me just pull it up and we can actually have a look at what numbers I had. I'm sure I'd finished 38 items. This feels like more than that, and I wonder if I've missed some stuff off my list when I've talked about it before. Bearing in mind that that was 38 items, and some of them were sample knits and gift knits and have already been given away. So what I've got left here feels like more than 38 items. But that was what I'd written down. Let me see if I can find. Yeah, so I had a total of 38 finished objects, 14 garments and 24 accessories. I think I've got that wrong. I think I've missed something somewhere. So what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to count these up as we go, if I remember. And we'll talk through them. This is going to be a fairly long video, so grab yourself a drink. If I'm reading and I'm looking, I've got numbers on my laptop, which I'm going to put... Honestly, I wish I could show you. Can I tilt you down a little bit just to show you the amount of stuff here? So we've got 1, 2, 3. This is another pile over here. Giant piles of knitwear. And these are all like multiple things. Multiple things here. Yeah, so it's going to be a long video. Let me intro first and then we'll go through that. So, welcome to the Emily Knits channel. I said that bit already, and I'm so overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that I completely forgot what I was saying. My name is Emily. I am a knitter and crocheter in my mid-30s, based in the north of Nottinghamshire in the UK, where I live with my other half and our 2 dogs. So before we get into the video properly, where can you find me? You can find me on Instagram as @Emily_Knits_. All of these will be down in the description with links, because clearly I can't even remember them, so how do I expect you to? You can find me on Ravelry as EmilyKnits36. I don't keep that super up to date, as will become obvious as we go through all of this. However, you can find me on there. There is also, I have a wish list on Ravelry, so if you wanted to support the podcast, the channel, by buying me a pattern, feel free to go through that. Do that through there. I am always super grateful for anybody that does that, and I'm going to get around to knitting some of those shortly, and crocheting, because one of them is a crochet pattern that you bought me. You can also find me on email. You can contact me on email, which I know a couple of you have, and it's been really nice to see the stuff that you're making on emilyknitspodcast@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Ko-fi if you wanted to support the podcast that way instead, as Emily Knits. So, a couple of things before we get into it. First off, if you're a reviewer that watches my normal podcast episodes, thank you so much for your patience last week. I became aware when I was editing that the next door neighbour's dog was barking mentally. It is a recurring problem that we have, that we need to address, but is always a bit of a sensitive thing. And honestly, I hadn't noticed how bad it was when I was filming, and I thought my mic would filter it out, because I do have a mic, and I had hoped that it would filter it out, and it did filter quite a lot of it out, I'll be honest, but I was conscious that there was probably a good 40 minutes of that video where the dog was barking in the background, so I'm really sorry for that. Thank you for your patience. There hasn't been a peep out of it today, which means I think that its owner is in, so I think we're okay. And if it does start barking, I will try and change the settings on stuff so that we can get it filtered out, because I realise if you're listening through headphones and things like that, that isn't great. It isn't what you want to hear. On that vein as well, I do also have a drink. I've got a coffee, of course, because I'm going to need lubrication to talk through all of this. But a couple of you commented, somebody mentioned last time, I slurp my coffee a bit, and I'm really sorry for that as well. So I'm going to try and make a very concerted effort to not slurp, because again, I realise nobody wants to hear that through the headphones. So thank you for pointing that out. See, quiet zips, I can do it. It's whether I remember, isn't it? I'm not going to try these on here and now, but I will put in some B-roll of me trying them on. Some of them aren't tryable on, some of them things. And I'm going to be referring to a couple of things throughout. So in the beginning of the year, I started off by writing my finished objects down in a book. And then, when? Probably sometime about September. I lost the book and I didn't know what I'd done with it for ages. Or I thought I knew where it was, but I couldn't be bothered to go and get it. So I didn't record them in here. And then I've done a list on my laptop in preparation for this video. But I'd missed some of the early stuff off there. And then, yeah. So I need to use this initially, and then I'm going to be using my laptop. So if there's rustling and if I'm looking at things, I'm just referring to those, because there are plenty of things here that I haven't got, that I need to have reference to, because otherwise I would forget to talk about. I'm waffling, and this is going to be long anyway. That was the other thing I was going to say. I'm going to blister through these quite a bit, because there's a lot here and I'm going to take up a lot of your time if I waffle. What I'm going to try and go through is sort of salient points on each one. Would I knit it again? How's it held up? Did I like it? Did I not? What would I do differently? But I'm going to try really hard not to waffle too much. I've tried to get these in chronological order, but I'm not 100% certain that I have. There are some things that I don't have pictures of and that have been gifted, so I'm just going to have to mention them. But most of them I either have, or I have footage of, or I have a picture of, because I've been doing a podcast for a year. And anything like details of designers that I can't remember, I will pop on screen as well. So let's get into it. And we're going to start off, I'm going to sidle a bit, because the first one I haven't got. The first thing that I finished was a gift for my mum. So my mum's birthday is in January, and in January 2024 I finished off a Maxine hot water bottle cover for her as a gift. So this is a pattern by Laura Penrose. You're probably already aware of it. It's really good for scrap. I made this with a kit from Les Family Yarn. I bought myself the kit and I made it in their colours, and it was stunning and the yarn was really nice. The only thing I will say is the main colour, the background colour, was DK, and that's fine. It was a DK weight pattern. The minis that they send are fingering weight held double, which became quite hard because they're little minis, having to have these two tiny little balls of yarn getting tangled up with each other. That was a little bit challenging. However, it was beautiful. It was really fun to knit. It was really satisfying. The yarn was gorgeous and my mum absolutely loved it. And I know this lives in their motorhome and goes on holidays with them and things. It goes with her wherever she goes, basically. So that was a really, really nice pattern. The kit from Les Family Yarn doesn't come with the pattern as well, so if you are planning on doing that, you would need to buy the pattern separately. But yeah, very highly recommend. I know she's done some additions to that this year. She's done some different patterns. She's done the Maxine sweater. She's done some smaller hot water bottle cover patterns. But it was a very nice pattern. It was the second of hers I've knit, but I've only ever knit accessories from Laura Penrose, and the patterns are great. I really enjoy them. The next one that I finished, I do have to show you, which is this bad boy. Most of the knitting on this was done in 2023. This was a Christmas gift for my husband in Christmas 2023. And I knit most of it in November and December, really December 2023, and then I finished it off in 2024 because I didn't quite finish it in time. So this is the Selbu Coat by Skein-Deer. I can't remember if I've already said that. This is this beautiful top down, steeked, all over colourwork cardigan. It's absolutely beautiful. I can't get over how good it looks on camera as well. It was really fun to knit. I can't remember the size I knit. I did make one slight modification to it. My steeking isn't the best. One side came out really nice. This is one of my sleeves, and my button band's not bad. The first one I did, big mess. Not so good. Had to fix some bits on that. That was my first ever time steeking, so I don't think that's that bad. I feel like I was on 5mm needles, and the yarns are both Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool in the shade, I think it's Nougat is the darker one, and I feel like it was oatmeal or something like that for the lighter one. Really nice to work with, really soft yarn. And I started off the beginning of this year on a bit of a kick with these kind of Peruvian Highland wools, Cascade and things like this. The trouble is they don't wear very well. Start off with the modification I made on this. So the modification I made was to make the collar a bit thicker and to add buttons and buttonholes. As you can see, one of the buttons has come off, so that's an issue. And I had a pattern in my stash for another cardigan that had same gauge, same needle size, could be used with the same yarn. And I used the same method for buttonholes as they recommended, and the same ordered the same size buttons, but there is a problem with that, and you'll be able to see if I just put one through the hole. The buttonholes are too big for the buttons. So he wore it once, it kept popping open, one of the buttons popped off, and it didn't get worn after that, unfortunately. It is now a bit big on him because he's lost some weight this year. I did order some bigger buttons, but there's another one. Oh no, that was the top one that came off. I did order some bigger buttons, but because it no longer fits him, I haven't bothered putting them on yet. I've been wearing this a bit this year actually, because it now fits me quite nicely. The other thing that I would change if I was going to do again, I wouldn't put the buttons on because it didn't work very well. And I was playing yarn chicken at the end of this, so the bind off on this is really tight. There's no stretch to it. So the shawl collar doesn't sit as nicely as it could. And I was thinking, as I've been wearing this, I've worn this a couple of days recently, and you might be able to see there, the sleeves are really long. They're long even on him, but they're very long on me because they've got a really long cuff, which I have to fold back. And I'm tempted to take the cuffs back a little bit and use that to come back and redo the bind off and make it looser, because I think it would fit a lot nicer then. But yeah, this has only been worn maybe about 3 times, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see that it's already, you can see in front of my face there, it's already pilling a bit, it's already got a little bit of a haze to it. So lovely pattern. This is not the recommended yarn, and I'd be tempted to not use this yarn for a pattern like this because I think it's just going to lose that definition, but it does look really, really good. So that was my first finished object of 2024. Was there another one in between? Nope. Okay, so the next one was another test knit. Sorry, not another test knit, that wasn't a test knit, that was a gift knit. This is the Melange Collar by Woolyknit. This was a test knit. I knit this in some drops Nepal that I had in stash. It is covered in dog hair because this thing gets worn quite a lot. This is a little collar dicky kind of thing. Let me pop this on because I will pop the accessories on for you to see. My bind off's a bit tight over my glasses. There's a theme here of bind offs being too tight. I really liked this. So this is a little collar made in quite an interesting way. You cast on at one end down here. Normally with these you do like a raglan really, and you'd come down and do it that way, and then you usually go back and pick up a collar afterwards. This one, you start at one side, you knit all the way up, you shape for your collar, you then join in the back and you go down the back, and then you just come back and add your collar afterwards. So most of the knitting is done in one piece, and this is a really nice one. I knit this in drops Nepal, didn't use much yarn, very, very soft, really looks really nice and polished and finished, and it's got these, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well because of the colour of the yarn. The ribbon details are all in twisted rib, which gives it this really nice polished finish, and I really love this. I wear this quite a lot in winter to walk the dogs. Just very polished and clean, and a really, really nice pattern. Let me take this one off, it stinks of dog. So that was my second finished object of the year, and a very successful one. I did then finish a sample knit. So I had started this sample knit in December again. This was quite a long one. I sample knit for Woolyknit a all over bottom up, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, it was bottom up. Men's Gansey in 5-ply Guernsey weight yarn, their 5-ply Guernsey weight yarn. It was secret at the time because they hadn't released that yarn yet, and it was as part of them releasing that yarn that the sample was made. It was in this beautiful navy blue colour. The yarn was lovely, really, really nice for that kind of purpose. Quite a high twist, and quite heavy. The overall finished garment was quite heavy, but it was on 3.75mm needles. The gauge was really nice. It was some cables, but they weren't super complex, and some textured diamonds. It was, the thing I remember the most about it was knit flat and seamed, and the seaming took me ages because I was making sure I did it as neatly as I possibly could. But it was a real sort of, again, I'll have popped some pictures up. I was really, really proud of it when I finished it, and they were very happy with it. They then, we'll see later on, they contacted me later in the year and asked them to do another sample for them, so they clearly were quite happy as well. So that was my fourth finished object? Yeah, fourth finished object. I then had a bit of a crochet. Yeah, the next three are all crochet. Finished objects. I really didn't expect coming into 2024 to have crocheted as much stuff as I had. There's a lot of crochet around me. I used to crochet. I started off crocheting before I knitted. And I actually had an Etsy business for a bit where I was crocheting and selling finished items. And I did quite well. I made a little bit of money out of it. It was basically during furlough, that was when I picked up knitting and crochet, and it just supplemented my furlough income basically, because I wasn't earning as much as I would have normally, and to help support the family and everything. But I burnt myself out on crochet through that. And then from, what was that, 2020, Christmas 2020, from then I didn't really pick crochet up again at all until 2024. And there's quite a lot of crochet here. I got the bug again. And it started off with, this was the first crochet item I'd made in ages. This is, I think it's just called a scrap. I called it a scrap basket, and I think that might be the name of the pattern. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. Haven't woven my ends in because this is just a storage bucket basically. But I made this gigantic crocheted scrap bucket out of loads of leftover scraps of mostly DK weight yarn held together. You can see I was just sort of holding different things together. I had 3 strands at a time with that was a stitch marker, with a 9mm crochet hook, and it's a really nice pattern, really satisfying, really easy to follow, and I made it really nice and deep so that it sort of stands on the floor. This has had lots of use. This has been a project bag down here for a bit. It's been a project bag, like a bin, project bin, because it's massive, it's huge. And it was really fun and really quick to make. Used up scraps fantastically, and it's just super colourful and bright, and I really, really enjoyed this. So then I followed that up quite quickly after that with a second one. My other half asked for one of these for his room, so I did it in a lot of colours. Again, this was all scraps, was it? Yeah, do you know what? Again, this is all scraps. I didn't buy anything for this, but I particularly chose scraps that are in more the colours that he tends to like. So greens, greys, blues, those kind of colours. And again, 3 strands held together throughout, 9mm crochet hook. You start at the bottom, you work up, you add some handles. This one has been used, but not as much as mine has. Mine constantly has stuff in, but this goes in his room, and he does put stuff in it to keep it safe, and he likes it. So yeah, these were big scrap busting projects. I don't know how much they weigh, but like there is some weight to them. They are 3 strands of DK weight yarn held together throughout, so there is some serious weight, but they were great scrap busters. If you've got DK weight, or even, you know, you could use a chunky and a lace weight or anything like that, these are absolutely fantastic for just marling stuff together. I think at the bottom that's actually some Karen Simply Soft that's in there. There's some Aldi yarn. There's all sorts, absolutely all sorts, and it used up loads of acrylic scraps that I didn't know what else to do with. I'm gonna have a drink and take a breather because I feel like I'm out of breath, and we're only, what, 5 projects in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects in. So the next thing, I made is just down there, and I'm not going to show you because it's a doormat and it's gross because it's probably the most used thing I've made this year. I'd completely forgotten I'd made it, honestly. This was just a completely self-drafted crochet doormat. I got myself some yarn for it. I can't remember the size hook I used. It was either a 9 or possibly, looking at the stitches, possibly a bit bigger. I do have like a 12mm hook in my stash, in my hook library. Don't know. So I think that might have been what I used. But what I bought myself 4 balls of really cheap acrylic from Aldi when they were having their craft event thing. 1 ball of, was it 4 or was it 3? Sorry, having to look over at the doormat to remember. It was 3, it wasn't 4, it was 3. It was a grey, a blue and a green, because the colours that we have in here are, we've got a grey sofa, we've got a grey carpet, we've got a green rug, we've got grey curtains, greys, greens, that's kind of the vibe in here. We've got a green dog bed, stuff like that. And it was basically, we've got patio doors here, that's where the light comes from, and when we let the dogs out on an evening, we generally have to go out and bring them back in because they don't want to come out. So then you get wet feet and then you are walking straight onto the carpet. That's how a doormat works. You know how a doormat works, I don't need to explain that to you. But it was basically a complete self-draft to make something that worked for there. I basically just did a big rectangle that was sort of doormat sized, and I chained how many stitches I wanted for the width, and then I went up and I kept going until I ran out of one of my balls of yarn, and at that point I stopped. And I used up the majority of all 3 balls, and it made a really nice doormat shaped thing. It's basically, it looks like one of these, but just in 3 colours all the way through. And that's essentially all there was to it. We then start getting into garments. So, garments for me. So the first thing I finished in terms of, the next thing I finished in terms of, and the first thing I finished in terms of garments was my Irene Sweater by Journey Through Yarn. This was a test knit for Rebecca of Journey Through Yarn. This was my first time. Oh, what is that? That's really strange. On camera there's like a light, yeah, there's a light mark here, but there's nothing there. That's really strange. I'll have to look at that a bit closer. I don't know what that is. That's really odd. Yeah, this was Rebecca's first pattern, and I was very lucky to test knit for her. This is a drop shoulder sweater design with this all over beautiful dip stitch texture. It's really fun to knit, really satisfying. The dip stitches are really, really nice to knit. And then you've got fairly straight sleeves with I think it's got a little bit of decreasing in it, but they're fairly straight. And then you've got a cuff at the end, all 1x1 rib on the details, and it's a really nice fit. Couple of things with this. The pattern itself is lovely. Again, my shape has changed, doesn't fit me as well as it did when I finished. That's my fault. This was made in Cascade 220, I think in the shade, is it called Cinnamon? I think it's called Cinnamon. And it's really not worn very well. It's properly pilling. You can see it. Yeah, you can see it there. It's really properly pilling, and unfortunately it's also losing some of the definition in the dip stitches because of it. And I think Cascade 220 was the recommended yarn, so not ideal. But this is just, the trouble is it's such a nice soft warm yarn. It comes in beautiful colours. It's nice and cost effective. It's 100% Peruvian Highland wool again. And it just doesn't wear how I would want it to wear. I haven't de-pilled it, but honestly, I'm a bit worried about de-pilling it because of those dip stitches. So yeah, unfortunately, doesn't get as much wear as I would like it to, because it now looks a little bit scruffy, basically because of the yarn. I mean, look at that. That's a massive pill that I've just pulled off it. And I'm not really hard on it. It pilled on the first couple of wears, and it's such a shame. You can see there under my... Can you see that? Where my arm rubs, it's felting. And I haven't worn it that much. God, that's really badly felting. Let me see if I can show you that. You see that there? It's like a big mat. And up here as well. And I haven't worn it that much. So unfortunately, I think the yarn maybe wasn't the best choice for me to make this out of. But it does make a really nice sweater. And the design itself is lovely. The next thing I finished, I think, I'm on the next page, so let me just check. Oh no, okay, there was another thing I finished before this, but I haven't got them, and I don't think I've got a picture. So I finished some 3x1 rib socks for my dad for his birthday. His birthday's in March. He'd asked me for some more socks. I finished a pair of 3x1 rib socks for him. I can't remember what yarn. Oh, I do remember what yarn I used. I used Drops Fable long print. I can't remember the shade. I'll pop it on screen. They were really well received. He loves them. I think he's worn through them already because he wears them. He tends to put them on and then not take them off until they really need a wash, and they're like walking into the washing machine on their own. But yeah, I finished those in March 2024. My dad's birthday is in late March. So I finished those before then. Then we finished, this was another test knit that I had carried over. I put it the wrong way around. From 2023. I'd started it in 2023, finished it in 2024. This one has been worn a lot, and this is worn, the yarn is worn so much better than the Cascade. So this is a recommendation that I'd make instead of that, although it is a bit lighter. It's covered in my hair. There we go. So this, oh, look at it. This is the Leo's Cabled Sweater by Emily Chen. This is a really, really beautiful pattern. This is a bottom up, all over cabled design, as you can see, but I think it's quite modern cables. It's got quite sort of long cables. They're not really intense. And then you've got these big sections in the middle of this big wide rib that sort of breaks it up and makes it look really, really nice. Again, it's drop shoulder, and you've got the same cable down the sleeve, but just one. That's really hard to show you. One of those big cables down the sleeve, and the rest is all in rib. And then you have this detail that you can see a little bit there and up the side as well, where you've got like a faux seam detail, which is this nice little tiny little cable. I adore this. Again, doesn't quite fit as well as I want it to now because of my own shape change, but I have got so much wear out of this. I think this is so wearable. I knit this in Drops Charisma in the shade Light Oak, I think it's called. And I was entirely inspired by, she had 2 samples for this. One of them was knit in Drops Charisma, but in a blue shade, and the other one was knit in, I think it was Rowan Tweed held with mohair, in this sort of light greyish shade, I guess is the best way to put it. This obviously isn't tweedy, that one was, but I instantly knew when I saw her sample I wanted it in this sort of colour, and I love this. I've worn this a lot, and as you can see, it's not really showing any signs of wear. And I would say I've worn this more than the Irene sweater. There is a little bit of pilling under the arm, but you can still see there it's completely unfelted or anything like that. So this is, I've also got a sweater that I made in 2023 out of it, my Go Fret Raglan, that again looks like it's not really been worn. So it's an incredibly hard wearing yarn, and I really recommend it. So that is my Leo's Cabled Sweater by Emily Chen. We've then got 2 items that were on my Whip Parade from 2023 that I finished. No, one of them wasn't, but one was. That I finished, but you can probably tell from the amount of ends on them that they've never been used, and I think I'm going to frog at least one of these. So first off, I finished the From Farm to City. Every time I nearly do that. This is the From Farm to City shawl by Woolyknit, which is this lovely shawl with, you do the centre spine first, I guess, which is this really nice cable, and then you do these 2 big long wings. And I do really like this. I like the pattern, I like the colours. I'd got these originally to make a pressed flower shawl for my mum, and I just didn't like how it was turning out. I just didn't like the pattern, I'll be honest. The problem I've got with this, and the reason I think I'm going to frog it, is because despite my attempts to block, despite the fact that this has an I-cord all around the edge, I've gone round and done an applied I-cord, I've aggressively blocked it, I've steamed it, I've wet blocked, I've pinned, I've done everything. It just curls. And you end up with these 2 rat tails at the end. Lauren's sample doesn't do this, and I wonder if it's because it's superwash merino that I've knit the main bit out of. I wonder if I did it with something like a woolly wool, which I think she used John Arbon. I wonder if this would stay flat more. But I'm tempted to undo this and reuse this for something else. So the yarns were, I'm pretty certain it was Drops, not Nepal, Flora in the middle. It's one of the DK, both DK weight, and it's the DK version of their alpaca wool blend in the centre. So it's really nice and soft and fuzzy. And to be fair, this centre spine's turned out really nicely. Lots of really nice definition, and it blocked really nicely as well. The wings and the I-cord are then in Floof Fibres DK Merino base, in the shade, I think it's Marjam, something like that. And it's beautiful. The colour's beautiful. It's sort of blues and purples and browns. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I just think it's wasted in something that I don't wear because it curls. So I think I'll probably take it out and do something else with it. I do have some more of this left in stash because I'd got 2 skeins to make the pressed flowers. So this is one that's most likely going to get pulled out and used for something else. But it's not like I've got, I'm desperate for yarn. So I'll probably wait for a little bit on that. Okay, so the next thing I made, I don't have to show you, and was a bit gutting. So I made my other half a pair of socks for, I think just because he really likes socks. I think I just made him some socks. I had some self-striping sock yarn in stash, which was Stylecraft Head Over Heels. I've still got some more actually, I want to make him some more. And I did that. It was almost like sort of retro stripes, I thought. The colours were quite retro. They reminded me of kids' TV programmes from the 90s, which is when I was growing up. I was a late 80s baby, and it reminded me of 80s and 90s kids' TV programmes, really bright primary colours, and he liked them as well. And then I'd done some blue heels, toes and cuffs. Heels, toes and cuffs. And he loved them. He said they were about the best fitting socks I'd ever made him. I made them a bit bigger than I normally make his socks, so that was the point that I learnt to give a little extra length on his socks. And he wore them for quite a bit, and I managed to felt them, and I don't know what I did. I wonder if it was when we got a new washing machine. We got a new washing machine at some point in the year, and obviously you've got to learn the settings a bit, haven't you? I didn't think I put it on a particularly hot wash or whatever, but they came out and they were very definitely shrunk and they were very definitely felted. And the moment I tried to re-stretch them back out, they just ripped. So unfortunately, I completely ruined his favourite pair of socks. He still married me, so we're okay. We got married later in the year, so clearly it wasn't, it wasn't that bad. But he loved them, and I'd really like to make him some more because he absolutely loved them. So, yeah, I've got some more of that particular yarn left, and I've also got another ball of a slightly different colour that was just ever so slightly not so primary colours, like a little bit lighter. But again, self-striping in those retro colours, so I think I'll probably make him some more of them at some point this year. So then after that, I finished a project that I'd started earlier in the year when I'd done my test knit for my Melange Sweater the first time, but I hadn't finished. And this was Melange Collar number 2, basically. And this was using up, you can see the details in this much, much better. This was using up some leftover, I completely forgot a detail on the first one. I'll talk about on this. It was the same on the first, but I've forgotten about it. This was using up some leftover Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool that I'd used to make my husband's cardigan. And this was the lighter shade, which you can really see the details. It's absolutely beautiful. And I really, really liked this. I completely forgot on the other one to show you a detail because I didn't do the final step. Again, a little bit too tight. I was playing yarn chicken on this one. So the intent is, and the intent on the other one is the same, is that you fold down the top. But on this one, unfortunately, it makes it a little bit short because I was playing yarn chicken. But again, it fits really nicely, looks really nice. I feel like the blue looks a bit better on me. I intended this to be a gift for my mum for Christmas and then promptly forgot about it and haven't gifted it to her. So I might make it like a Mother's Day gift or something. But yeah, I just never actually fully finished it and wove the ends in or anything like that. And it is a really, really nice collar. So I should finish this off properly and then either use it or gift it. It's a bit more of it's less drapey than the other one because that was Drops Nepal, which is an alpaca wool blend again. This is just pure Peruvian Highland wool. It's really beautiful, really soft, but not as drapey and a bit more sort of solid and rustic. So that was the next thing I finished. We then get into summer tops, I think. Yes. We then start to get into summer tops, which is this pile here. So, and we've got into more tests as well. So the first thing that I finished, the first summer top that I finished was this. The summer tops really don't look great because they've been stored and they've creased like mad. This was a test for Celine Phaeton with Celine Knits, I think. This is really hard to show. This is going to look better in the B-roll, but I'll try and show you here. So this is a little camisole top with this beautiful wicker stitch at the top, and then the rest is stockinette. And you've got a little bit of a split hem at the bottom, and these garter seams, garter details down the side, and a bit more of the wicker stitch at the bottom. This is a really interesting pattern. So I finished this and I wasn't very happy with it, and it isn't to do with the pattern's quite good. The pattern has, as with all of Celine's patterns, has loads of information in it and loads of bits where you can customize and details on how to, if you want to get it to fit your waist, where to decrease and where to re-increase and everything. So I did it to come in at the waist and then go back out again over the hips. And the main reason I didn't like it actually when I finished it was not because of the pattern. It was just because of the yarn that I chose. So I knit this out of Drops Saffron, which I do actually quite like. It's 100% cotton, and it was nice to work with. The thing is, if I can find them, because it's 100% cotton, the increases don't look very good, and you can see it way more down at the bottom there. It's created like a ladder. And that's just because yarns like this are not very forgiving. The other thing was I put bust darts in it. She always has options for bust darts, and again, because it's cotton yarn, you can really see where they are. So I finished it and instantly wasn't super happy with it and ended up being a bit, this is a waste, I'm not going to wear it. I wore this so much over the summer. This became a really easy piece to just pick up and throw on, put a shirt over the top or something, have it open so you can see a bit of this nice little neckline poking out. But I wore it a lot. I wore it far more than I expected to. Again, it's worn really well. It's 100% cotton, so it generally will. And yeah, it was actually far more successful than I expected it to be when I finished it. So this was one of those lessons of don't go on your first feelings necessarily when you finish a project, because it might grow on you. This one really did. Yeah, that was my first finished summer item of the year, and I got a lot of wear out of it. I then went on to make a couple more summer tops. One's been more successful than the other, but they are both from the same designer, so we'll talk about them. The first one was the Jantje Tee by Herb Garden Knitwear. This is a bottom up again. Oh, I didn't say the Wicker Dreams is top down. I should have said the Wicker Dreams is top down. The Jantje is a bottom up, all over textured tee. It's got rolled edges. It's got no hem or anything on it. It's got these garter lines, and then it's got this really lovely lace panel that goes vertically up two sides, and the back is exactly the same. You can see through at this side, and then it's got these really nice little flutter sleeves. I love this top, but I have a couple of things about it that I don't like. I'm not super keen on the flutter sleeves. I tried something different for me, and I just don't think they suit me very well. That's just personal preference. I would wear this more if I'd done little cap sleeves on it or something like that, but that's my own, personal preference. The main thing I don't like is the yarn, and it's the colour. So I knit this in Stylecraft Naturals, which is a cotton bamboo blend yarn, DK weight, but it's a very light DK weight, and it's a really lovely yarn. It's got a beautiful drape and movement to it. I've got quite a lot more of this in stash, and I plan to make some more stuff out of it this year. The problem is the colour, and I can't remember I think it was called Nutmeg, the colourway. I tried to move into neutrals a bit. I tried to go for something that I thought would suit me, and I think it just is a little bit drab on me, unfortunately. It just doesn't really suit me very well. It makes it feel more like a top my grandma would have worn. Sorry grandma. I could probably dye this, and I think I might try at some point, because I think I'm not wearing it massive amounts at the moment, so I'm not going to lose anything if I try to dye it and it doesn't work very well. So I think at some point this year I'm going to try to dye this. But the tee and the pattern are lovely. I just chose the wrong colour. This in a different colour would have been absolutely gorgeous. And the next one was another pattern by Hannah. This was a test knit for Hannah, and this is a lesson in when you go through a colour that doesn't normally suit you, but it works incredibly well. So this was the Reveries Tee, which is a pattern I tested for Hannah. Excuse that little bit at the back that I've not quite woven my end in. This is a top down, mainly stockinette t-shirt with the main detail is these like cable and eyelet details around the collar, cuffs and hem. This was intended, the recommended yarn was Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. I knit this in Fantasy Yarns Cotton and Bamboo Blend, the 4-ply in the shade Lilac. And this is a really beautiful yarn. This is a very cost-effective alternative to Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. It's not silk, so it's not alternative in that way. But in terms of something that gives the same gauge and is very light and drapey and has a similar sort of feel to the silk, this is beautiful, and I can very highly recommend the yarn. This was a slog. This was 3 or 3.5mm needles, and it took me a very long time to get down the body, but it is so worth it. I adore this. It is absolutely beautiful. It is a little bit short on me. That's my own fault. I should have added length. It took me ages to get down the body, and by the time I got to the length recommended in the pattern, I was just like, nope, stuff it. That's it. It's done. I did gift the remainder of the yarn to a friend who wanted to try it, so I haven't got the yarn left in stash to try. But I still do wear it. I've had this on the last couple of days with a cardigan over top because I really love the fit and the colour of it on me. The only thing I'm not super keen on, this isn't the pattern again, this is just Summer Yarns, is you can see the increases because it's a round yoke. But that is just one of the things you get with Summer Yarns, and it's just a bit of a trade-off because this is an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous top and really, really wearable. I adore this so much. I love this pattern. And the yarn has held up beautifully and has the most beautiful drape to it. So very successful, that one. So the next thing I finished was this guy. This was an attempt to stash bust. Halfway through the year, I started getting stressed about the amount of yarn that I've got in my stash. As you will know if you've seen my 2025 plans video, I didn't do great on that, and I'm on a yarn ban and I'm stash busting this year. But I had some balls of Stylecraft Grace in my stash, which is a wool, acrylic and mohair blend. It's mostly acrylic with a little bit of wool and a little bit of mohair. And it's this really light, it's another one that's supposed to be a DK, but it's very, very light. But it's got quite a halo to it. And I had 4 or 5 balls of this in stash. and I decided to turn it into a crochet cardigan. So this is an edited version of the Mezzo Cardigan by the Make and Do crew, I think. It's a free pattern on their blog, so it's full of adverts. But it's essentially a hexagon cardigan. So you start under here, you go outwards until you get to the size that you want, and you do another hexagon over here. Then you join them together, you add some length to the back and things like that. You add some more on the fronts, you do your sleeves, or you add some length to your sleeves. Then you do your cuffs. The modifications I made to this was I didn't put the collar round, and I kind of wish I had, because it doesn't sit as well as I would like it to. It sits quite far back. Again, I don't have any more of this in stash to be able to make it work. The other thing I knew at this point, but I just did it anyway, and I should have changed it, is I'm not a big fan of balloon sleeves. I just don't find these hugely practical for me. I prefer a more tapered sleeve. It looks lovely, and it is a really nice cosy thing to wear, but they're not very practical. This doesn't fit under my coats. So yeah, not the biggest success, but I did very much enjoy making it. The process was really, really enjoyable, and it got some yarn out of stash that I had absolutely no idea what to do with. So that was the Mezzo cardigan. The next thing I finished I don't have. This was when I started a big sample knitting kick in towards the later end of the year, and the next thing that I finished was the first sample that I'd taken on in 2024, if that makes sense. So I'd finished the Woolyknit sample, but that I'd started in 2023. So I sample knit the Piennar top by Vera Välimäki for Botanical Yarns in 2 of their colourways. I know the green was Alchemilla Mollis, but I didn't have a name for the pink colour, so I wasn't 100% sure on that. They have kits for this on their website, so if you wanted the exact same thing, you can get it on their website. This is a top-down drop shoulder top, which is striped, all over stripes with lace stripes, basically contrast colour and lace stripes. I really thoroughly enjoyed knitting this. The yarn was beautiful. The yarn was beautiful, the top pattern is beautiful, the colours were a combination I never would have picked, and it came out really, really nicely, and I was really pleased with it. So that, it went back, and I was, compensated for that. I actually intend to knit the top again for my mum later in the year in different colours, because I think she'd really like it. The next thing I made, I haven't woven the ends in. When I was doing this, I was like, the dogs aren't using this, the dogs are never using this isn't for the dogs, this is for me. The dogs have been all over this is a dog blanket. I made a scrap, basically a granny rectangle blanket out of a scrap cake from Ruffles Yarn, Ruffles Crochet Creations, Ruffles Yarn on Etsy. I love their stuff. I've got a load of minis from them, and the inside of it was this merino scrap cake, and then it went into one of their other scrap cakes, which has quite a mix of other stuff, acrylics and things in there. And then around the edge I just did a scalloped border that I put on myself in King Cowl Big Value DK, I think is the name. I've got a load of it in stash. It's just a very basic acrylic DK weight yarn, and this was the sort of full thing. I made, it's like a little lap blanket size. I didn't have enough to justify getting another one because they're not super cheap, the scrap cakes, although I do really like them. So this has become a little lap blanket. Basically it's a dog blanket. The dogs fit really nicely under it, so it has become a dog blanket, and it gets a lot of use as that, but it was very fun, very satisfying to work on. We then, then I've got a couple more that I've got, and then we start to get into things that I've either can't find or have sent back. This was another one of this was a test knit, but it was another one of my summer knits for the year. So this is the Tendreil Tee by Sophie of the Knit Pearl Girl. This is a drop shoulder, top down t-shirt with this beautiful cable detail on both shoulders. The same cable detail is on her Tendreil sweater, which is another option as well. This is a DK weight pattern I knit it in drops. Shit. Oh no, I've completely forgotten the name of it. I knit it in the drops yarn, the name I've completely forgotten, but it's the equivalent of Sandnes Lina. So it's the cotton, linen and polyester blend. Oh, it's going to bug me. I knit it in this dark grey colour. I can't remember the size I knit. It's a bit oversized on me. You can sort of see it was oversized on me when I finished it, and then I shrunk a bit. The main problem I had with this is that I did the same thing as I did with the Reveries Tee. I got a little bit overconfident on the body length, and it is a bit too short, unfortunately. I've worn this a couple of times, and I wore it, last time I wore it, I wore it into Nottingham over summer, and I caught sight of my reflection in the shop as I was walking past, and I was just like, oh, I can't wear that anymore. That doesn't look good. It's just because it's short and it's wide, it sits way off from my body. But yeah, that's my own fault, because this is such a gorgeous tee, otherwise such a gorgeous fit. I would 100% make this again. It's really bugging me that I can't remember the name of the bloody yarn. I'll put it on screen. The yarn was lovely. So this is that, like I say, it's the leaner equivalent, and there is also King Cole Linendale that's the same sort of composition. What the is it called? It's going to really bug me, but I really, really enjoyed working with it. It does create quite a heavy garment. This is quite heavy, and yeah, just don't do how cropped is too cropped. Just add more than you think you'll need. Particularly, I've learned that with summer garments, they tend to grow widthwise a bit more on me than they do on lengthwise. So that's something I need to consider. I then carried on my crochet kick. This started the love affair with Yarnsmith's Pebble Haze prints. So Yarnsmith's Pebble Haze prints is I think it was released last year, because I think Yarnsmith's only became a thing last year. Yarnsmith's is Wool Warehouse's own brand, and they do some really beautiful yarns. There isn't anything that I've tried from them yet that I don't like, and I've tried quite a lot. But particularly the Pebble Haze prints, I fell in love with. I made this out of it, I made this out of it, which we're going to come on to in a minute actually, and I'm making something else with it already this year. I've made another thing with it already this year, and I'm making something else with it. But this was the first. I ordered 2 balls of this colour, which was supposed to be Aldeburgh, but I wasn't 100% sure if that was actually the right colour when it came. However, it's a blown yarn in these colour changing patterns, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's so nice to work with, particularly crochet. I haven't knit with it yet. I need to try knitting with it really. But this was the Mystic Morning Wrap by Alexandra Terrell, who's 2 of 1s. You can, again, similar to the Make and Do crew, was that what I said it was called? You can find loads of her patterns free on her blog. You just have to deal with adverts, and that's what I did for this. So this is a crochet triangle shawl. You start at the top, you work your way down. It's supposed to have tassels, which I didn't add. This hasn't been used as a shawl at all, despite the fact that it is quite nice. Oh, it looks good, doesn't it? Maybe I should use this as a shawl more. It sits on the wall behind where I work, and it's like a little decoration. But yeah, I absolutely fell in love with this yarn, and I ended up going on to use it for multiple other things in multiple different shades. And I really should wear this, because it really does look quite nice, doesn't it? Yeah, okay, that needs to get more wear. But yeah, this was a really nice, satisfying pattern. It was very quick to work up. I felt like I did it in a couple of days. And it's very light. It's very light. It used about 170 grams of yarn, I think, something like that. The Pebble Haze prints comes in big 150 gram cakes, so you could get it out of one. You just have to maybe do a little bit less at the bottom. But yeah, very satisfying to make. She's got loads of different patterns for wraps and cardigans and all sorts of things on her website, so highly recommend checking that out. We then had 2 more things that I haven't got. One because I can't find, and one was a sample. So after I'd finished the sample for Botanical Yarns, I started working on a sample that I had got for Shannon of Blue Fern Yarns. And you've heard me rave about Shannon throughout the rest of the year. Her yarns are beautiful. I've knit quite a lot of stuff out of her stuff now. She was fabulous to sample knit for, and I haven't got a bad word to say about her or the process at all. So I sample knit the Sprout by Anna Johanna, which is a top-down circular yoked colourwork sweater. I knit it in her yak base, which I can't remember the composition of, but it's obviously got yak in it. It was a fingering weight. And I knit it in the shade, the green was emerald and the grey was the undyed base. The yarn is beautiful. It was so stunning to work with, and I've since worked with quite a lot of her classic sock as well, which is just as nice. The yak obviously gives it that extra sort of depth to the colour and drape, but it's just beautiful. It was so nice to work with. It blocked beautifully. I did an all over fingering weight sweater in colour work, and I still loved it. Like, it was such a nice yarn. And that set off a bit of a love affair with Shannon's yarns as well. So I mentioned I'm going to knit a Piennar tee for my mum. and that's actually in some of Shannon's yarns that I got for credit for making this top. And Shannon helped me to pick out the colours, which was really, really nice of her, because my mum's colouring is very different to mine, and Shannon is incredibly good with colours. So she's helped me pick out the colours, and that is going to be coming quite soon this year, hopefully. And the next thing I finished was a test knit for the Stitching Witch, which was the Jub Hat, and I can't find this. I wasn't super happy with it. If you watch my podcast, you've seen this already. It wasn't the pattern. This was a colourwork hat. It had different colourwork on the front to the back, and it had almost this sort of like Aztec kind of colourwork. It was beautiful. The pattern was really, really well written. The problem was I didn't choose very well on my yarns. So I ended up unintentionally choosing I'd chosen like an orangey peachy main colour, and then a black for the contrast, or a really dark grey for the contrast. And I loved the contrast it gave. But I'd unintentionally chosen the dark grey was a bit of scrap that I had in stash that was a bit thicker than the other yarn, and I hadn't realised. And it meant that when I was catching floats, which you did have to do on the colour work, it was popping through, and I could see the floats on the other side, and it was my own fault, completely my own fault. The pattern didn't, the pattern even told you not to do some of the stuff that I'd done. So really lovely pattern, not very well executed by me. Very much recommend the pattern, just don't do what I did. The next thing I finished is here. He's hiding, and he's also underneath my mic cord, so let me just get him out. This was a bit rogue this year. I've never made amigurumi before. And in June, July, August, when was he? I haven't actually written when he was. I decided to make Hugo the Humpback, who is absolutely gorgeous, and I love him. He lives down here on the daybed in the living room. So Hugo is an amigurumi whale, which is a pattern by Humble Child Co on Etsy. She's got some other fab ones. I used all of this for stash, except for I had to buy the eyes and I had to buy some stuffing. But the yarn was stash. It used up quite a lot of it, and then the rest of it I've actually got rid of because I decided I wasn't going to use. I think these were both... I think they were Stylecraft Special Aran with wool. It wasn't Stylecraft. Wendy. It was Wendy Special Aran with wool. So it's like an 80-20 wool acrylic blend. In the blue shade for the top and this grey and blue shade for the bottom. And this was really, really fun to do. Really well written, because I've never done an amigurumi before, and I managed to create this. Excuse a little bit of his grey that's poking out there. I managed to create this absolutely gorgeous, absolutely massive humpback whale. So if you're in the mood for a bit of amigurumi, I can very highly recommend her pattern. She's also got a jellyfish that looks absolutely amazing, and an octopus as well, that I really want to try. So yeah. Oh, look at his tail. I did that. I'm so pleased with him. He was a big win this year. Big win. I then finished another test knit for Hannah of Herb Garden Knitwear, which was the Feth Shawl. I don't have this because I actually ended up gifting it to my mum for a Christmas present. She absolutely loves this. This is a top-down triangle shawl, so you start in the centre and you increase out. It starts with just rib, and then you start incorporating some little cables. They get more and more frequent as you go all the way down, and then you've got a big cable border at the end, and it's really beautiful. It was really fun to knit, really satisfying to knit. I think it was a DK weight gauge. I had some really plump sport weight yarn, which was a Schoppel Zauberwolle, and I used that, and it created the most beautiful woolly sort of faded shawl. It was absolutely gorgeous. It's completely in my mum's colours, so I gifted it to her and she loved it. So that was a really, really enjoyable knit. We then have a little pile of patterns, finished objects that you may recognise, because I banged on about these for bloody ages. So we got married in October last year, and like a mad woman, when we got engaged in March, I decided I was going to knit my wedding dress, and this was my wedding dress. So this was my Melides Dress by Irene Headband. This is really hard to show on here. There are no words to explain this. This is the thing that I am proudest of in the entirety of my knitting career. It looks so good. I'm going to put in B-roll, and I'm going to put in some pictures of me on the wedding day. It looked so good. It was exactly what I wanted. It was such a triumph in so many ways. It fit me exactly how I wanted it to. And it's a stunning, stunning pattern. I could do with making a couple of alterations to it, but I'm probably not going to, because I don't really want to rewear this. I'd said all along, I can rewear it as a summer dress. I can get some more wear out of it. I don't want to, because it's my wedding dress. That's what it is. It's my wedding dress. And yeah, I couldn't have been more happy with this. Inez was one of the most fantastic designers to test knit. It was a really great test knit group. It was fabulous to test knit for, pattern to test knit. So this is the Melides 2.0. So it wasn't a test of the original pattern, but she'd done expanded sizing. She was going through, I think this might have been the last one, all of her pre-released patterns and doing extended sizing on them to make sure they were inclusive. And this was one of them. And yeah, she's edited it for clarity, edited it for size, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Really hard to show, so I'm going to stop waving it about. I knit this in Frolic Pure Silk, which is the recommended yarn. I used the shade Copper, which is perfect. It was the colour she'd knit her sample in, and I'm so glad I just stuck with it and went with this colour because it really suited me. It went with my other half suit that he'd chosen on the day. The yarn is a dream. The yarn was hard to work with, but it's such a dream to wear. It's so beautiful, and yeah, there are not enough positive adjectives to describe how happy I was with this. It's absolutely stunning, and it was worth every single minute of every single stitch of every single slog, especially through the skirt. I was on 2.75mm needles to get gauge, and as I've said multiple times on this podcast, when I was making this, I was sitting at about a 47-inch bust, and I'm 6 feet tall, so it was a lot of knitting, but so unbelievably worth it. So yeah, that was that. And around that time I finished a few other things as well to go with it. So I finished, this was a little rogue edition. So what I hadn't considered was the fact that I was getting married in October and I had a sleeveless dress. So I went to Yarndale with my mum later in the year, and I picked some colours, or Shannon helped me. Shannon from Blue Fern Yarns helped me pick some colours to make this, which is the Mediterranea Shawl. I took my dress with me, and she helped with the picking. In fact, I'll just put up a picture again because I was wearing the shawl. And this was basically my wedding shawl that I crocheted in about a week to go with my dress. So we start in, I think this is Spiced Latte at the top, Pumpkin Pie in the middle, and then I think it's Autumn Leaves or Leaf Pile at the bottom. This one is absolutely my favourite with the greens in. The trouble is, I had the least of that left. This was a really satisfying pattern. It's only charted, so it's worth bearing that in mind. It was a free pattern though, so again, you don't have to pay for it, but it's only charted, so if you don't know how to read crochet charts, which I didn't, you're going to need to learn, but really satisfying to knit, and an absolutely beautiful finished object that went incredibly well with my dress. And then I also finished 2 little accessories for him. I did finish a pair of socks for him as well, which were green with orange contrast, and I can't find them. They were his wedding socks. I can't find them. They'll be in one of his drawers somewhere, but I can't find what he's done with them. I know he's worn them quite a bit. So I made a little pocket square. This is out of the same Knitting Frolic Pure Silk, and this is the Jaunty SOB pocket square on Ravelry. This is essentially just a little gauge swatch. This didn't get used in the wedding because we both completely forgot about it. So this didn't get used, but I did make it. This did get used, and this was also a triumph. So this is the Jeremy tie, which is a very cheap pattern. Very cheap pattern on Ravelry. I feel like it's about £3. And you'll be able to see in the pictures, because again I'll pop up a picture of him in there. It looks so good. It looks like a tie. It looks like a legitimate silk tie, because it is, but I've made this. So this was a really interesting construction. You'll be able to see if I hold it up close that it's knit on the bias. So you're shaping on every single row. And then you do some sewing to seam it up at the end. My sewing isn't great, but you couldn't see that when he wore it. So all of these were a massive success, except the pocket square because I forgot about it. But they were all, yeah, really, really pleased with all of those. Then we'll go on to this, because this is where I start to lose track of what I did when. So this I am going to have to put in a reel or a B-roll for. This was up there with the most successful things of the year. This is the Yorkshire Blanket, which was a crochet along by Mima Makes, Amelia of Mima Makes. I started off, joined the crochet along and started making a fingering weight version, and because I'd really loved this yarn, I ordered myself, when it was on offer one month, I ordered myself 5 more cakes, did I? Yeah, I think 5 more cakes, and I didn't know what I was going to do with them. And then while I was waiting for them to arrive, I realised that I could make a DK weight Yorkshire Blanket with them, which is what I did. and I ordered some. So I had the colours Peppercorn. There's one that I got that I didn't like that I've still got in stash. It was either Salterton or Saltburn, and the other one is this one. Peppercorn, Rye Hope, Saltburn or Salterton, Cold Nap and Aldborough. So some of the Aldborough that was left over is in here as well, this greeny colour. And then I joined them all together with Jan Smith's Pebble Haze Solids in the colour Ivory, and I adore this. This came on holiday with us to Scotland when we went away for Christmas. Most nights you can find me underneath this. I absolutely adore it. The pattern is incredible. It's incredibly well written. It's got US and UK terms. It's got video tutorials for every single square in there. It is so well written. She has put so much time into it, and I cannot highly enough recommend it. I'm still going with the finger and weight version, and what I think I'm going to do, I said about this in my plans video on my whip parade, sorry. I'm just going to continue making squares throughout the year, and I'm going to join them together at the end of the year in a massive scrappy one. But this is my completed DK weight one, and I adore this thing so much. I made 2 crochet pumpkins from a pattern by Brianna K Designs. I still have them. They're in a box in the garage because they were Halloween decorations, so I will pop up a picture if I have one. I made a smaller one in yellow and a bigger one in orange, and they just sat on the windowsill as Halloween decorations, so they are still here. They were quite fun to do. I then did a couple of more sample knits. So I finished a pair of The Truth Is Out There socks by Stone Knits for Dyed in the Wool Yarns. Both in her sock base. The black was called Sabbath and the green was called Roots Radical. And yeah, they were a slog. They were a slog just because it's all over colourwork socks. And I got to about ready to do the heel, tried them on, realised they were far too tight, so I had to rip them out and start again. So they were a bit of a slog, but I was again very pleased with the sample in the end. And I also finished a sample knit for Third Vault Yarns. I don't think I have a single picture of this, of her Ascension cowl, which isn't out yet. That was a challenge in a different way. I enjoyed it actually. It got the synapses firing, but essentially it was I was test knitting and sample knitting at the same time because she'd done a very rough pattern, and there was a lot of going back and forth with Lola and making sure that it worked and making sure that it all made sense. It was beautiful in the end, absolutely beautiful. In some of her DK weight yarn too, that again it's a new colourway she's going to be releasing relatively soon. I then finished the Irene Headband for Journey Through Yarn. I've got some footage of me somewhere, I think, from my old video where I talked about this. I can't find it. I've worn it quite a lot. It's probably in a coat pocket somewhere, but I can't find it. Where I joked that it doesn't suit me, but it keeps me warm. This was a little crocheted little knitted headband, which was a charity release she did. It had that same dip stitch pattern that the Irene Sweater pattern had, and I knit it in Cascade 220 in the shade Pine, and again, really nice. Really enjoyed that, but can't find it anywhere. I then finished another thing that I don't have, but I do have a picture of. In fact, no, I finished this first. I definitely finished this first. I've forgotten to talk about this. So this is one of the last things that I have, and this is the Duncan. This had a really long name. I think it's called something like the Duncan Men's Cabled Raglan Sweater. Really catchy name, by Sarah Hatton for West Yorkshire Spinners. This is, as you can tell, a men's cabled raglan sweater. It's knit bottom up. This is long because this is for my other half. It's knit bottom up, it's knit flat in pieces, and then it's seamed together. I knit this out of Wendy pure wool in the shade Stag, which I had some of in stash, and I bought some extra for it because basically my other half had requested this yarn because I'd made him some socks out of it before. This is pilling a bit, but it's not the same as the Cascade, and it's pilling, and you can tell that the pilling is on the surface and it's not impacting the stitches underneath. He's worn this a lot. I found that the sweet spot with my other half this year when it comes to garments, so the Selbu Coat hasn't really been worn, but this has been worn loads. And the sweet spot with him is he tells me what he wants. I go and find some patterns that fit that, show him that, and then he chooses from that. So then I have, I've chosen the patterns that I send to him. So I've got something that I know that I will like. And also he's picked something that he knows he will like, and he's super happy with this. So yeah, let me just show you those cables a bit closer. Oops, because they're beautiful. And it's the same on the back. Cables are all the same on the back, and then plain sleeves. It's a nice pattern. It's quite a simple pattern, but it was very easy to work out and to follow, and yeah, Really pleased with this one. I added the only modification I made to that one was I added a little bit of length to it. Except for one, the rest I have here. So the next thing I finished was the Tilly scarf, which was a test knit for Chai Crafts, Sana. This is one of those little Sophie scarf-esque things, except this one is in moss stitch. This was a really simple little test. It was quite a quick test, and it's a free pattern on her blog. But it was a really satisfying little process knit. I knit this in some John Arbon that I had stash. Black Gold of the Sun, I think is the shade name. It was the Yarnadelics Sport. Really, really nice yarn. Really nice finished object. And nice little satisfying process knit. I then finished another thing that I don't have, which was the sample knit, the second sample knit that I completed that I mentioned earlier in the video for Woolyknit. This was their Amelia cardigan, knit out of their 100% wool Aran weight cones in the shade Cream, I think it just was. This was a bit of a slog, but very satisfying in the end. It was knit bottom up in pieces, all over cabled. You do your back, then you did your two fronts, and then you did your button bands almost in a weird way, and then you did the sleeves and joined it all together. Lots of seaming again, but very, very satisfying at the end of it. Bit of a slog, but looked absolutely gorgeous. And again, they've confirmed receipt and they were very happy with it. So again, all good. And then I finished two more things. One of them I've shown on here before, or I've talked about on here before. The other I haven't. So I finished the Vinter Socks. These were a test, or the first one of these was a test for Hannah of her garden knitwear. And then the second one I completed as a gift from my other half over Christmas. So these are top-down colourwork socks. With colourwork on the heel, on the cuff and on the toe, and that's the second one. So I used Drops Fable for the contrast colour for the cream, and then the background colour is a Schoppel Zabwol in the shade Schokoladenseite, which is why they are sisters, not twins. They look quite different, but he really likes these. They were really satisfying to knit because the colour work basically goes all the way down to where you start your heel. It broke it up really nicely. You do your cuff, then you've got your colour work, so that's another section. Then you do your heel, that's another section. Then you finish your garter increase, your gusset decreases, that's another section. Then I had a little bit of stockinette to do, and then I'm back onto another colour work section which flew, and then you're on the toe. So these actually were a very, very quick knit, really. For me, for socks, they were anyway. And then the last thing I made, I can't even remember who this was by, so I'm going to have to look this up, but this was a completely spur of the moment cast on that I haven't shown on here before. We went away for Christmas, like I mentioned. We went up to Scotland. We always have, when we do presents, we do presents for each other every year. I've mentioned before, we're dinks, dual income, no kids, so we only have presents to each other, basically. But we have big presents and then we have a stocking. And I couldn't find one of the stockings, basically. So I decided I was going to make one for my other half. I made this out of James C. Brett Marble Chunky. I can't remember the shade because it's not a shade, it's a code. It's like a MC070 or something like that. If that's right, I'll be gobsmacked. Which is this colour changing, blues, greens, everything like that. It's in Alpine stitch, I think, which was really fun to do. And you basically make it like you would make a crocheted sock. You start at the bottom, you do a little heel, and then you work all the way up to the top, and then you do a ribbed cuff. And this worked perfectly. It was really quick. I feel like it was on a 5.5 or a 6mm hook, so it was really quick. It took me 2 days while we were all away, and we used it over Christmas, and it used up some yarn that I had in stash. So that was the last thing I made in 2024. I'm going to have to count as I go through how many things I actually finished because that feels like more than 38. Let me see if I can run through these. 39. So it is only 39 things. Only 39 things. It just feels like more, doesn't it? 40 because the Yorkshire Blanket's here that I didn't put in there. So 40 things. So I was slightly off. But it still is a bit less than it felt like when I was running through it. I learned some lessons from this year, and I think I've probably talked about them already in my goals, but crochet has come back in a big way. I've really loved crocheting things. I really loved summer garments. I've made fewer sweaters for myself than I thought. I've only made 2 sweaters for myself this year. Technically 3 if you consider that cardigan. And I'm already working on rectifying that this year. But yeah, there's been some successes, there's been some failures. I've learned a bit more about the yarns that I like and I don't like, and it's been interesting to see how they've worn through the year. The end of the year, it felt like got into a lot of test knitting, a lot of gift knitting, a lot of sample knitting. So a lot of stuff I don't have. And it feels like the end of the year was a bit frantic and a bit rushed. After the wedding, it felt like everything was a bit go, 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 go. So that was, you know, I'm not planning on getting married again this year, funnily enough. So hopefully this year will be a little bit more considered and solid and steady. And obviously I'm on my armband this year and I'm really trying to work down my stash. So that will hopefully again create a bit more mindful creating, mindful making, and trying to finish things, because I started a hell of a lot more things than this that didn't get finished, and that most of them have been completely frogged and given up on. So yeah, hopefully a bit more of a mindful year and a bit more of a year of finishing things, and actually I can have a bit of a different list to share with you next time. Let me know below, what is your favourite of the things that I've made this year? How many do you think I'm going to make next year? That's an interesting question. Thank you for watching, guys. I realise this has been a long one. I feel like I have given you a whistle-stop tour. I think if I have more than this next year, I'm going to have to split it into 2 videos because there's no way I can do it all in one go. But it's been really interesting to look back on the year of making and remember things and remember things I'd forgotten and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to be filming a stash tour. The verdict was fairly unanimous that for the 1,000 subscriber video, you wanted to see a stash tour. It ain't good. There's a lot of stuff in stash. There's a lot in stash. I've been going through and cataloguing it and organising it so I can film that and show it to you, and it isn't good. So that's going to be another old boy strap in video, but I'm going to do it because that's what you wanted. I also think it would be really interesting at some point to do an unpopular knitting opinion. So even though that wasn't the most popular, that will be coming as well. Somebody's just made a loud bang and the dogs are about to start barking. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I love to see you all subscribing and commenting down below. So yeah, I think that's enough, isn't it? So I'll see you on the next one, guys. Have a great day, evening, weekend, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.